Well, good morning, folks. We have a bit of automotive work to do today. So it's getting colder outside, and, well, an older vehicle like this is starting to run into a couple of problems. But that's not to be entirely unexpected. But the symptoms are a little unexpected. So we start this car, it's dead cold. I mean, that's a giant lump of iron in that inline six right there. So it's going to run terrible for that first little bit until the coolant's warmed up and that's circulating around and the engine's all warmed up and everything else is warmed up and things are behaving. But what's unexpected is that it continues to be like that after it's warmed up. So I think we're starting to run into a bit of a problem here regarding temperature control. We could have a stuck thermostat, we could have something else going on here. I'm not entirely sure. So let's go do a diagnostic on this and figure out what exactly is going on. Now, if you're lucky like me, you have the diagnostic tool to help you out here and a camera that's not wobbling around. But the idea here is that we're going to try and see if we can simplify the diagnostic on this. And yes, no, auto, diagnostics, harness 3 red, that's already plugged in. So I'm just going to plug that in. Are we set up? Yes, we are. Key on. And looks like it's going to wait for us to warm up now. This will take a couple minutes, so I'm going to make a cut right about here. Well, folks, this one here is getting pretty obvious. If I turn the heat on, I get nice hot heat. If I look at the dashboard, the instrument cluster says the temperature for the engine's halfway up. We're warm right now. But the diagnostic tool does not say we are warm yet. Now, this could be the air cleaner temperature switch, but odds are we're looking at a problem with the coolant temperature switch circuit. It's a little bit of wiring, and it's a strange little dual mode switch on this vehicle. So I'm going to turn the engine off now. I'm going to head on out, and we're going to do some diagnosing under the hood. All right. Ooh. Yeah, she's nice and toasty, very hot, so that switch should be working. So what we're going to do here is we're going to do a continuity check from the harness connection point for the switch to the diagnostic harness way the heck over here. It's unlikely that the wire from the harness here to the computer inside, about 1.5 feet away, is our problem. If it's going to be damaged wiring, it's going to be somewhere in here. Easiest way to do that on this 1982 model is down here by the emissions canister. There should be one 3-connector cable. Mine is green with a red tracer, black, and looks like a darker blue wire, or maybe blue with a black tracer. 3 pins, either way. So I'm going to unplug that, and I think you can just barely see that over here as well. Over here, yep, I'm hiding just behind over the air cleaner here. Now, what I'm going to do is we'll do the continuity check. Now I know that one of these wires is going to be our signal return, or ground, and the other one is going to be our signal to the computer. It's as simple as that. Continuity is going to be from this large diagnostic connector over here. I don't have a pinout available, but if you look down below, you'll see the pinout for the 1982 model, 6-cylinder. It does vary between them. There's no digital going on here. We're just looking for continuity. And okay, that's good. So we will start with our blue wire. And we will look for it just by touching each pin. No. Okay, so there's one right there I have continuity on. And there's no shorts to ground. So we do have continuity on one pin to the diagnostic harness here. So that's okay. So what about our signal ground? 3 pin there to the body. Yeah, should be. That's good. And look for the ground pin now. That's interesting. Okay, so on the third one down on either side, I have this going off. What on earth is that? Alright, I'm going to have to look that one up myself. Okay, I think I was able to rule that one out as a false positive. So I just quickly looked at the diagrams. This bottom pin here that I was testing, that's a ground. This top one here, this is the signal line for the 10 inches of mercury vacuum switch. This is a normally closed switch that closes normally to ground. So that's why we're getting that. But to rule this out as a false positive, we're just going to unplug the vacuum switch and see what happens. The vacuum switch manifold on this vehicle is over here, and I'm just going to unplug the 3-pin connector. And from back over here, if I haven't lost it, there it is. So we still have our ground, but do we have our other one? No, that went away. So that was a false positive. So we can verify now that we have continuity for the signal and ground from the connector harness all the way over to the diagnostic harness, and I'm pretty sure it's going all the way into the vehicle as well. So now, for obvious reasons, let's do a continuity check of the coolant temperature switch itself. The car is still hot enough that it should be able to switch it on, so we will have continuity over these 3 pins. So let's see here. Our blue and our black, nothing. Black to blue to green, nothing. Green to black, nothing. All right, folks. Well, that was a pretty obvious one. Coolant switch on this vehicle is no good. All right, now I come to the portion of the video where I have to admit to you all, I lied. I know the coolant temperature switch in this vehicle is bad because this is the coolant temperature switch right here outside of the vehicle. There's a dummy one that I have in there right now that just basically prevents the wet intake manifold from leaking coolant because I don't have anything else to plug it. But I wanted to show you, you had for some reason the diagnostic tool, that if you try and test with that, you can narrow down a bad coolant temperature switch by the fact that it'll never continue through the testing because it waits for the engine to warm up forever. Or if you don't have that, and you don't even have documentation on how the wiring in this works, it's 2 pins on the diagnostic harness, a multimeter that has a continuity mode on it, and just locating the connector to verify continuity. It was as simple as that. Now comes the fun part. Why the heck do I have the sensor here? What am I doing with this? I had to rebuild this sensor. The main issue is that if you look up the 1982 model year AMC Eagle, or even think of for the Jeeps as well at the same time, you're going to be recommended this. This is a coolant temperature switch. It's actually a 2-wire one. This one here only tells the computer when it's warm or not. Again, with this original one, it has 3 pins. This is a double duty switch. This one here tells the computer when it's warm and turns the intake manifold heater on and off. It's an electric device that basically helps with improved cold drivability. The other thing that you're going to be recommended when you look up coolant temperature switch is going to recommend to you coolant temperature sensor. This is a little tiny analog sensor pickup. This is exclusively for the temperature gauge on your dash. This is not useful to us at all. Rebuilding these switches is not all that enjoyable. You have to grind off the retainer ring on the top, separate the components, clean everything, put it back together. You have to epoxy it back together with a high temperature epoxy. I use JB Weld because why not? Then this one here, you probably can't see it in the video, has 2 little slots on 2 of the pins. This is a calibratable sensor. So you have to recalibrate it as well once you're done with this. And that's just basically a pot of water and just changing the temperatures around. You cannot find replacements for them, aftermarket or new old stock. And I'm starting to clue into something here. The one that was in this vehicle was no good. I rebuilt it once, and in 3 months it failed already. I had a salvage one that I was able to get from out east. That one was dead on arrival as well. So I'm cluing in these are not really reliable switches. And I can tell you that because the next year they switched over to a whole new type of switch, which is all you can order now. And what I'm referring to is this. This little sensor is important because when it tells the computer the engine's warm, it also tells the computer to start entering closed loop mode, in which case it's no longer running fixed values for the fuel control through the carburetor, because this is an electronic feedback vehicle. it's now regulating through the O2 sensor, which is another integral part, but we didn't get to that point here in the testing because, well, we knew the coolant temperature switch was bad. Anyways, we now have to wait for this vehicle to cool down a bit, and then we can switch out the sensor. Now, here it is on this vehicle here. You can just kind of make it out screwed into the front of the wet manifold. A wet intake manifold is quite simply, it has a loop of coolant that's going around the thermostat, through the intake manifold, to the heater core, and then back to the engine. So that's how that's work. This thing, however, hides just underneath the air cleaner. So I gotta move this out of the way so I can actually reach it. So I'm gonna remove the snorkel attachment and put that over here for the moment. Disconnect the heat stove. And then I'm going to take the top off the air cleaner and put that there. And I can just kind of lift it up and move it out of the way. And can I close the choke? There we go. And that'll just make sure I don't have anything that falls in there. I will have to deal with that hose. So I'm just going to unplug it. It's the PCV purge line, or it's the purge line 2 that goes through the PCV vacuum. So I'll put that over there for now. And the actual cap, zoom in on this a little bit and focus. That just pops off the end of the unit, like so. And I can recover the entire rest of the harness. I will need it. But anyways, so to get into there, all you need is a 1-inch wrench. We're going to use the open end and the closed end. And that gets you over there. There we go. And I'm just going to work it repeatedly. Now, normally when you do this, you should be taking the coolant or draining the coolant down to below this. But if we're fast enough, we can actually do this without spilling coolant everywhere. One of the key things to do is to keep the radiator cap on. The idea there is that it's going to kind of hold itself in by vacuum. It will still spill a bit, so not loose yet. Come on. There we go. Is it loose? Okay, it's loose. Alright, now, before we go any further, I'm going to take my new coolant temperature switch, or my rebuilt one. I'm just going to put a little bit of Teflon tape around that. So there we go, Tefloned up. Alright, now, we're going to do a little bit of a Indiana Jones switcheroo here. So I'm going to loosen it until it's just about to pop out. And you can't see me do this because my hands are in the way. 1, 2, go. And we're in. So this is the coolant temperature switch I had in there as a dummy. You'll notice here that I've actually removed both of the calibration pins. That's because I used them to rebuild the other one. This unit here is a rebuild candidate, as long as you still have the pins. That's why I say don't snap the pins off on something like this. That just has to happen. Unfortunately, there are no replacements that I'm aware of. If there are, just put something down in the comments. But let's get this thing tightened in after I wash this coolant off of my hands. Alright, now to tighten this back in, again, just use the open-ended wrench. We'll do it and tighten first so I can align it. Come on. Alright. Oh, I see. My epoxy is in the way. I'm going to do it the old-fashioned way. Now, how does the connector want me to orient this? Flip it around another 180 degrees. We got a bit of space to do that. Or no, we don't. Okay. Fair enough. And now we can take our cable harness here. Now, if you look at the cable harness, you'll notice there's a D-shaped imprint there, and on this side here, there's a recessed dimple. That ratchets up with what's on the back of the coolant temperature switch. It's so that it can only be plugged in one way. That's why I wanted to figure out the alignment first. So, dimple there. And on that goes. All right, leave that there for the moment. So that's back and installed. Gently move that back into place. Reconnect your PCV line. And then we can just pick up our air cleaner. Try and find the center point on it. There we go. And we'll thread that back on. This is just the cover for the air cleaner I'm screwing back on. There's nothing special to see here. The heat stove, again, that helps improve with cold driving. Just kind of snugly fits on there. There shouldn't need to be, you don't really need a hose clamp on it. It's snug enough. And then this ridiculous snorkel here, which just goes up to the front. And I try not to break these stupid clips. Alright, so there we go. Now, I'm going to do a last test here. Coolant temperature switch, the engine should be cooled off enough by now that we won't see anything on blue and black. We do. Okay, cool. It actually qualified. Alright, and on the other one? And that side has actually opened. Okay, cool. Did I plug that in backwards? Something seems a little amiss here. I just want to verify that before I screw it up. Thankfully, I don't have to unplug everything or remove everything again. Right, well, the statement still exists from when I last said I'm a retard. I'm still a retard. Remember, this black wire here is signal return. It is not the ground for this to the chassis. So if I do a green wire, then I should have continuity, because that's normally closed when it's cold. I do. And if I go here black and blue, I have continuity. No continuity. So the engine currently thinks it is cold. So we're good. So let's just plug that back in. And let's go test the car. Okay, we should now have a nice and hot engine. What we're looking for is a complete reversal of all of our sensors. And now we'll do it first to see if we have continuity from our signal return or ground to our coolant temperature switch. Yep, we do. Okay, so that's good. Now, let's check the manifold heater. That should actually go open. There isn't a pin in the diagnostic harness for that. So what we'll do is we will unplug the harness again, and do we have continuity between ground, which again, chassis ground, and the switch? You do not. Want to be positive about it? Nothing. Good. So that's manifold heater has now turned off. We can confirm the coolant temperature switch turned on, so the engine went warm and the computer understood that. So I think it's pretty easy to say now, we fixed this car. And there we have it. We have diagnosed this problem we were having, which was a bad coolant temperature switch. You've seen now exactly how I diagnosed it, how we were able to locate it, we were able to verify that it was a problem, and then how to replace it, and then how to retest it again. And that is it for this vehicle. In my personal opinion, given just how unreliable these are, however, I need you to get yourself a intake manifold from a 1983 or later AMC Eagle and put it into one of these 82s. The big advancement that I've been told so far is that the manifold heater switch and the coolant temperature switch now have different spots on the manifold. As a result, you can use these newer, more reliable switches. At the same time, you can keep the vehicle stock enough the computer will work absolutely fine. And if you're working with emission standards, that's not a problem as well. But that's all for today, and I have to return back to my weekend routine. So until next time, have a good one.